right? Cortisol is a stress hormone. One of the effects of cortisol is that it sears in memory. Culture is what happens in those hard moments because that's what people remember, right? So you can sit there and say, we're all about being innovative, but under pressure, if you just stayed, to the status quo, you don't take risks. Well, are you really innovative? 65% of people now would forego a pay raise to see their manager fired.
That data just kills me.
It it really does.
Please join me in welcoming performance and culture coaches JP Pawliw and Bill Benjamin on the last 8% on high performance teams and cultivating a culture of courage and connection within your organization. Welcome.
Teresa, thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's you and I've known each other, gosh, for like probably 12 or 15 years. And I got to tell you, I never knew that NSB is 50 years old. That's incredible. I mean, that really is impressive. And having worked with a number of bureaus around the world, I can tell you, and you know this if you're working with Teresa and their group, they know what they're doing. And we're so excited to be here to talk about, we think, a really important topic right here and right now. And so, JP from Toronto, Bill from Chicago, it's great to be with you. Any opening words, Bill, before I jump in?
No, just I really appreciate Teresa and the NSB team
Yeah,
bringing us to this session. Good to be here.
great. So I want to start with a question. Why would anyone want to be led by you? Seriously, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about your team. I want you to think about your highest performer on that team, that person who people on their team, on your team, would go through a wall for them. Clients love them. They get your strategy. They're adaptive. This is the person you would most hate to lose. Okay, got that person in your mind? Why would that person choose to sacrifice their time, their talent, their careers, their time away from family for you? I think that's really important to ask ourselves right now. When we work with athletes, and this is not a program about high performing sport, although we do work with teams like that. When we work with an athlete who's going into an Olympics or a Super Bowl, we work with them to get an anchor question, that one question you have in your back pocket that you can, when the kind of the sky feels like it's falling, things feel a bit out of control, you ask yourself this question, and it instantly brings some clarity, some perspective about what matters most. And to me, this question, why would anyone want to be led by you, I think matters today because things do feel a bit chaotic. People in your organization and the people who you serve, your client organizations, they are feeling tariffs. They are feeling uncertainty. And yet, at the same time, they need to move fast and they need to innovate. So it's a challenge. And we want to build a case today that not all moments are created equal. Some moments have an outsized impact on all of the things you care about, your results, your reputation, the culture on your team. We know that 65% of people now would forego a pay raise to see their manager fired.
That data just kills me.
It it really
Oh,
does.
gosh.
I think it speaks to the almost the pain that people experience in their managers, in their
Mhm.
leadership. Um, and so what we know is that when you're under pressure, there's more cortisol in your brain, right? Cortisol is a stress hormone. One of the effects of cortisol is that it sears in memory. Think about 9/11, or if you're a hockey fan, when Sidney Crosby scored the goal, or if you're a Leaf fan every year, I shouldn't say that, though I am from Toronto, so I can say that. But it's just like cortisol sears in those kind of both the horrible memories. I've gotten a call at 3 a.m. That was just a horrible call to get. Um, but also the really great memories. Cortisol sears in that moment. Why are we talking about this? Because here's the deal. You can be really effective in 92% of the moments that you face, But now you're facing, there's more pressure. You're in a last 8%. Everyone on the team, including you, has more cortisol in your brain. What that means is that whatever decision you make, whatever behavior you engage in, gets seared into their brain, becomes your reputation. And that's not small. Your reputation drives so much of your career success. We do a horrible job in most organizations around who gets promoted, who doesn't. It's not great. I can tell you, I know that literature pretty well. What drives the decision in a manager is more what's salient in their mind. What does that mean? That means what can they remember? And where does that come from? The last 8% moments. So in a sense, it'd be smart for you to say, hey, how can I get better in these moments? Because it's going to drive the reputation in the minds of others, which will drive my career success. The next thing to think about, what's at stake, is culture. So in the same way that our reputation is driven in last 8% moments because of the cortisol effect, the cortisol effect is at work for culture, right? And let's just talk about this for a minute, right? Culture is not the values on the wall. No, culture is actually, just go back, Bill, if you don't mind. Culture is what happens in those hard moments because that's what people remember, right? So you can sit there and say, we're all about being innovative, but under pressure, if you just stayed, to the status quo, you don't take risks. Well, are you really innovative? There's one thing we know right now categorically that drives high performing teams. One thing above all else in the data, and that's that people take risk, interpersonal risk. They name an inconvenient truth. They have that hardest part of a conversation. They make the tough decisions. And what's clear right now is that if people on your team don't feel safe to take a risk, give you feedback, then you're not going to be where you need to be in terms of their performance. This is, we're looking at this. Why do we step back? Well, it's because of the fear of judgment, right? Our biggest drive is to belong. We don't want to get excommunicated from our tribe, from our group. In fact, I'll jump to it now, but it's in the slides. There's this fundamental conflict going on for you and for everyone on your team, right? You have this need to take risks to be high performing. At the very same time, you have this internal need for self-preservation. And so you default to protection, not risk. We call it the fundamental conflict of performance, right? You need to take risks to be high performing, to move fast, to innovate. But at the same time, you and everyone on your team will default to protection, not risk. And unless you can get over that, and this is where I appreciate your comment, Robin, unless you can get people feeling less fearful, you will not get the innovation you need to get. There's no question of that. Toxic bad apple hang around on a team. They will decrease, even if they hit their individual targets, they will decrease the performance of the entire team by 30 to 40%. Don't make that deal with the devil that I have made.
Yeah. And JP and I both coach senior leaders. We've never had a senior leader say, I wish I'd let that person, stay longer. It was always, I should have done something sooner. And it isn't always just fire them. It's coach and develop and give feedback. But I've made that mistake too of avoiding dealing with someone who's having a negative impact.
Yeah. Leads to high anxiety, high burnout. It's not, look, you can actually get short-term results, but you can't get sustainable results. And people burn out, there's high anxiety. It's not a great place to be. So now in the bottom left, that's a fear-based, which is the big characteristic here is that it's inconsistent. At least in the upper left, your manager is going to say something even if they're unskillful. But in the bottom left, you have no clue what this leader is going to do. He or she's going to show up, and give feedback, not give feedback. And in fact, a lot of their behavior is driven by the emotion that they're feeling, right? The mood they are in, which means you're walking on eggshells around them, right? Low risk taking. Who wants to take a risk to get, you don't want to get hammered. Bad apples, again, are tolerated. And the group think here is not like the bottom right, which is I don't want to upset others, so I won't speak up. It's, I don't want to get hammered. That self-preservation, that fundamental conflict. And so as as you look at this map, we often, Bill mentioned this earlier, um, where CEO gets up before us and says, we're like a family. And, the truth is you might think of yourself as a family. You're not a family, right? In a family, you don't let go of your lowest performing kid, right? But it doesn't mean you can't have high care. And the big difference here that we want you to get is you can have high care like a family, but if you twin it with high accountability, that's when you get your best performance. That's when you get risk taking. And final point is this, one of the things that we do is we coach coaches in the NFL, NBA, NHL, Olympic coaches. And what I've noticed in some of those really great coaches is their athletes feel high care and high accountability. In fact, their athletes feel, and I mean this word literally, their athlete feels loved. And because they know their coach's intention, they feel loved, they feel that high care, they can endure that high accountability. They can endure high standards, really honest but fair feedback. And that's when you get aggressive learning, risk taking
Able to see the
performance.
chat.
So listen,
Sarah mentions, it isn't just the leader that establishes the culture on the team. Individuals on the team absolutely can
absolutely.
have an impact on the team. They can, show care and demonstrate. They can also be toxic. And so you're right. It isn't just the leader of a team that can
Yep.
demonstrate that can form the culture.
Yeah. And I'll just say this as you're jumping on, Teresa. Toby asks, is this map going to be in the HBR article? Absolutely. So the article that's going to be published is both the data on the last 8%, that 34,000 person study, that gap between, the risk we feel we should take and the actual risk, but then the map, which is what enables that risk taking. But Teresa, great to have you back.
Thank you so much, JP and Bill. Really appreciate that thoughtful walkthrough of the research that you've done and what you've seen in terms of how that impacts organizations. And then giving us that map is so insightful, realizing where do you fit on that map and then sharing some of the behaviors that contribute to it so that we're all aware. So thank you for that.
Our pleasure.
Uh, we do have time for some questions, and I see some coming in. Feel free to add your questions as need be. We have a
What?
question. Oh,
Go ahead, Teresa.
no, you're good.
I was sorry. I was going to jump in because I saw a good one, so I got a little anxious there.
That's all right.
Janice says, "What do people do when leaders tell them that HR will fix it?" And by that, I'm assuming she means the culture.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. Do you want to take it, Bill, or would you like
Yeah,
me to?
yeah. I mean, again, I think that's where. I mean, I'm guessing a little bit. I'm making some assumptions here that individual who's saying, "Well, HR is going to fix this," doesn't realize they own the culture on their team, and they're
Yeah.
thinking, "Well, I can't change what senior leaders are doing."
Yeah.
Well, one, have you given feedback? But two, for the most part, you're right. You can't necessarily change what everyone around you is doing, but you can own your culture on your team. So I think that's really for me, Janice, the answer to that question. And feel free to, fill that in a bit or add some context to that.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the big thing. So in our practice, Bill and I speak to audiences all over, but the bigger part of our practice is actually helping organization change their cultures at speed and at scale with the map and everything that you've heard today. And that key, we mentioned it earlier, it's not HR, it's not CHRO, it's not CEO, it's people leaders. That's who you want to equip. And the data is pretty clear that when you do that, they actually love it. Their teams love it, but you can do this at speed and at scale. And that's really exciting, of course. I noticed Teresa said, when is HBR? It's going to be September of this coming year, Teresa. Other Teresa.
Yes, but we're going to send you a draft copy of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Just so you're going to get you're going to get a preview of it.
Yeah.
We do have a moment for one of the questions which helps people with the next steps, which came from Genevieve about advice on making the transition from one type of organ culture to another, especially if you're a family and you want to go to high performing last 8%. Any tips on making that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the biggest concentration, as people see in the article, and we saw, was in the lower right family. Makes sense. More of us are avoiders. So that all, that's consistent. A couple of things. And look, we've done this in our building, helping organizations scale their culture and evolve to be more innovative and high performing. There's a couple of things we've learned. If you don't have the senior lead, even though people leaders have to be core to everything we're doing, you need the CEO 100% bought in. It can't, culture is not it's a nice thing to have, or we should have a nice culture. No, in our opinion, the only reason you work on your culture is to help you execute your strategy. Your people are so busy, they don't have time for platitudes, empty gestures. No, if this helps them get more done, get more traction, feel better about being productive, then they will jump in. And so you need the CEO seeing this, and you need work done at the senior team so they're actually modeling the behavior. And then you need a structure for those people leaders to own the culture on their team. And we have something we've developed called a sprint. We won't get into it now, but we're pretty excited about that. And so the key though is when that CEO says, "Hey, folks," and we do this in a very kind of choreographed way in an interview format, virtually to the whole organization. When they sit there and they go, "I have been avoiding. I'm part of the challenge around being a family culture." That's when people feel like when they show that bit of that vulnerability, that's when they start to go, okay, things are changing here. So it's got to be everywhere all together all at once to create the peer pressure to say, we are a courageous organization. And it happens all across. I wish we had more time to talk about that, but I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much for that and for everyone for joining us today. JP and Bill, I found it was a really clear approach to building company culture and focused on accountability and care. And as you just mentioned, becoming a courageous organization. And so generous with your offer to provide the advanced reading copy of the Harvard Business Review article coming out this fall, as well as the culture map. So we will ensure that the video recording, sample takeaways, as well as those two key pieces will be included in the follow-up to everyone who RSVP'd for this session. I'm loving all the chats.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Yes, excellent talk, extremely useful, such an interesting topic. Thank you.
That's my mom, Teresa, who's writing that in.
The audience here, this is what I'm seeing coming through. We'll be sure to send you those. And I'll just use a moment here to also acknowledge one of the attendees, Janice Cardinale. Thank you for your contributions in the discussion. This is May Mental Health Awareness Month, and Janice is an advocate for mental health with Event Minds Matter for the events industry. It can be a really stressful job, and as JP and Bill, as you've pointed out, it can be challenging for our mental health when we're avoiding issues. So you providing us some of the tools to address that, I think will help both the events industry and a lot of the corporations and associations that are online with us today.
Yeah, wonderful. And thank you for mentioning that, Teresa. Having some, experience that in our family, it's a really important one to mention. So I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Teresa. Pleasure to work with you and work with all your awesome clients.
Thanks, everyone. Let's go be courageous.
All right.
Take care.
See you now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.